Hello and welcome back to the Orlando Adventures podcast. I'm your host, Russ, and today's episode is the future of Universal Studios one. So, as you'll all know, I did an episode probably a month or two ago about the future of Walt Disney World one. Well, I wanted to flip the coin. I wanted to flip the coin and be fair to kind of the future of these parks by questioning the future of Universal Studios Orlando. As a lot of you'll know, I love this park. I absolutely love Universal Studios. But as with the future of Walt Disney World episode, I basically talked about what knock-on effect a park such as Epic Universe is potentially going to have on the rest of Orlando. And what I was kind of getting at in that episode is that by putting a new park into Orlando, it will have a knock-on effect. It will have a knock-on effect because the amount of people who are going to Orlando is a certain number. And by putting a new park there, realistically, what you're going to do is pull people out of other parks. So, you know, if you normally did a 2-week trip to Universal Studios and Islands of Adventure, then you might split your trip. So you're going to do a third Studios, a third in IOA, and a third Epic, for example. If you do a 2-week trip and you do Disney and you do Universal Studios as well, you might do like one less day at Disney to be able to fit in Epic. I don't know. But that basically is what I'm saying. I'm saying that basically you're going to get a more watered down kind of crowd level throughout the parks by opening another theme park in Orlando. Obviously, from Universal's point of view, what they're hoping is that they're going to bring in new custom. So they're hoping that what they're going to do is they're going to generate interest and they're going to generate new business by opening this new park. That way, they're hoping that they can keep the same crowd levels at Universal Studios and they can keep the same crowd levels at IOA. Realistically, and I said this in the other episode, I'm not necessarily sure that Disney are going to be quaking in their boots. Don't get me wrong. I think they'll be aware of it. I think they'll certainly know that it's going to have a slight effect on them. But Disney is a juggernaut. Disney is what Disney is. If you want Disney, you have to go to Disney. If you want the Disney magic, you've got to go to Disney. If you want all of the franchises that they've got, then you've got to go to their parks, and they know that. But also at the same time, some people might want to split their trip to be able to fit Epic in, and I certainly would as well. I would certainly want to fit Epic into my holiday regardless of how long I went. So say I went for only 7 days, then I'm suddenly doing 4 days at Disney, 3 days at Universal, IOA, and Epic, and that is my trip. Obviously, if you're going to do it over 2 weeks, some people are going to do quite a lot of days at Disney, and you might have to sacrifice one of those days to be able to fit Epic in. And at the moment, we don't know how the ticket's going to work either. So there's been rumors, and these are rumors, but there's been rumors that basically for people from the UK buying a ticket, say you bought like a 14-day ticket, you'll basically be given the option to be able to buy a 1-day ticket for Epic Universe. With that, what Universal are basically hoping is that they're going to get the same amount of sales out of Universal Studios and IOA as they would normally get, but then they're going to get an additional day for people to go to Epic, and they're going to control crowd levels as well. They know it's going to be busy. They're confident. They'll know that what they're going to get is so much hype, so many people wanting to go and see all of these new rides and new franchises in the Orlando area. So they certainly won't be worried about trying to fill that park. But one thing I would say, if there is a park in my mind that potentially is going to maybe take a little bit of a hit in the Orlando area, I'm going to argue it's Universal Studios. And don't get me wrong, like I love Universal Studios. Universal Studios is one of the main reasons why I love going to Orlando. It is, and it's a non-negotiable. It is a place and a park I will go to every trip. Absolutely, categorically, without fail, I love Universal Studios, as we all do, as we absolutely all do. But the reason why I say that I think Studios is more likely to take a hit than any of the other parks, is because I think it could do with a little bit of updating, and that's me just being honest. I think that there's a few things in Studios for me that could do with updating to bring it in line with some of the other parks. Obviously, every single park out there, if we want to be super critical, could all do with an update on something. 100%. And we're spoiled with the fact that all of these parks love to update things and they love to put new rides in and they love to keep things fresh. But at times, when something potentially hasn't been updated for quite a long time, we begin to notice it and it begins to stand out a little bit more. And I think that the reason why I say Universal Studios opposed to IOA is IOA has got Velocicoaster and Hagrid's. And in my opinion, I think that those are such a big draw for people to go to that park, that I think they're confident that people are always going to go to IOA because of those two rides. They've smashed it out the water. They've absolutely smashed those two rides. And they're the only place you can go on those two rides as well. So to get into Universal Studios and to get into the future of Universal Studios, what I mean is, what can Universal Studios potentially do to keep their park up to date? What can they potentially do differently? What can they replace? What can they change? And I just want to kind of go through what I would do. And obviously there's going to be a few rumors in there. There's not really any news. Ultimately, there's not going to be any news until Epic Universe opens. Once Epic Universe does open, I would be absolutely shocked if they didn't go straight over to studios and begin doing something. And this is where we'll kind of start with the rumors. And there's been quite a lot of rumors that Rip Ride Rockit potentially might not stay too much longer. And there's rumors. There are rumors. There's rumors of potentially what could be done with Rip Ride Rockit. There's rumors of other things happening. But ultimately, until it happens, we don't know. So I can only kind of I can only speculate a little bit, and I can only say what I would potentially do. Well, do I think Rip Ride Rockit has run its course? Do I think it's had its time in studios? Honestly, yes. Yes, I do. I like Rip Ride Rockit. I will always ride it. I'll always ride it every time I go to studios. But at the same time, I wouldn't queue silly amounts of time for it. I'd probably queue half an hour for it. Whereas Velocicoaster or Hagrid's, I probably wouldn't bat an eyelid at an hour. I honestly, I wouldn't. But Rip Ride Rockit, for me, it just doesn't draw me in quite as much. And I don't know whether or not it's because there's a lack of an IP with it. I'm not sure. But what would I do with it? And there's been quite a lot of rumors, and I did actually speak about this in my episode with Parks and Pals. What would I do with it? Well, there is rumors. There's rumors that potentially Fast and Furious at some point might close. It's inevitable, right? Surely they can't keep Fast and Furious open. And the difficulty is that Fast and Furious is Universal Studios' biggest franchise. It's their biggest, most money-making franchise over the years. So you've got to have it. You've got to have it in the park. It's got to have a presence, because there's obviously a lot of fans behind Fast and Furious. And there's a lot of people disappointed by Fast and Furious, the ride. So could they potentially re-theme Rip Ride Rockit to be Fast and Furious? I think it's perfectly doable. I think it's an option. The difficulty you've got is, do you just re-theme Rip Ride Rockit? Ultimately, Rip Ride Rockit is quite an old ride now anyway. So we're talking about potential retracts in years to come anyway. Is it the wise thing to do to just go, you know what, let's just do like a straight swap and let's put an IP over it and let's dress it up as Fast and Furious? Is that the way to go? I don't think it is. I think the way to go is to knock it down. And I don't know if this is like super controversial. I don't know. I'd knock it down, and there's the Fast and Furious. There's the Fast and Furious Drift coaster. I can't remember what it's called, which is coming to California, I believe. And I'd be so surprised if they didn't bring that kind of idea over to studios. I think that it's a really good idea. I think that it's unique. I think that by keeping the presence of a coaster in studios, and I know that I'm biased because I love a roller coaster, but I think by having that one thrill ride still, I think is enough of a draw for some people to still make them want to go to studios. So That's what I would do. I would close Rip Ride Rockit, and I would begin the process of trying to close Fast and Furious and then put Fast and Furious over where this is. With that, it's difficult because what you're potentially looking at doing is closing two rides. Well, I don't think they can do that. I think you basically have to close Rip Ride Rockit. I think you have to say that it's going to be Fast and Furious, for example, and you keep Fast and Furious as it is open for now. And then when it gets closed, that's when you closed Fast and Furious, the bus ride as it is at the moment, and then you open the coaster. That's what I would do. I think that's the way to go. I think it would be successful. I think it would be fitting. And I think above all else, it would be fast. Have a fast coaster for Fast and Furious. I've said this since day one. Like, it seems baffling that they didn't do that at the start, but they didn't. It is what it is at this point. We move on. But on that, obviously, if we're potentially then talking about closing Fast and Furious, well, what do you do with that space? It's obviously a big space. They invested an awful lot of money in it. They invested a lot of money in it. It's a big part of the park. They're not going to knock that down. Let's be absolutely clear. They're not going to close Fast and Furious and then flatten that building. It won't happen. So that will get an overlay. There is no doubt in my mind that they will put something in there that will be an overlay of Fast and Furious. So what do? Where do you go? Where do you go with this kind of bus setup? What do you do with it? Well, I think the best thing you can possibly do is pay homage to something like the behind the scenes kind of bus tour. Let's lean into that. Let's lean into the fact that that's the backstage tour, the backlot tour used to be like a proper Universal thing, and especially over in like California area, that was a really big thing, and I'm pretty sure it still is, that you can go through like the boneyard and all that kind of stuff. But I think that maybe this is their opportunity to do a real pay homage to Universal, and classic Universal at that. So you could do this whole thing where you go and get on the bus and they're like, we're going to take you on a retro nostalgia trip, okay? And with that, you can go through it, and there can be movie props. So you can have things like the DeLorean, you can have something from Jaws, you can have something from Twister, you can have something from all of these classic franchises that we've loved over the years but don't have a presence in this park anymore. That's what I would do. I think it would be really cool, and it's a screen based attraction. So why not? Like, why not have it so that you can go on this bus situation, but then you can go and be in Back to the Future, or you can be in Jaws, or you can be in Terminator 2, for example. I think that it would be a clever idea, and I think it's not the most difficult thing they could do either. I don't think they need to pay huge amounts of money to go and use someone else's franchise, and we'll get into that in a minute as well. I don't think that they need to be hugely creative, because they're just basically going to pull off things that they've done before that people miss. And it's an absolute guaranteed knock out the park, because everyone's going to want to go on it. Like, because that's what made a lot of us fall in love with Universal in the first place, all of these classic films. So that's what I would do. I think it honestly lends itself to do something like that so well. And things like movie props, things like scenes from the movies, that you can kind of be in them. The fact that you could try and like be in Back to the Future again, I think for me, it's an absolute no-brainer. And obviously they've listened to the fans with Epic, they've listened with regards to Dark Universe, and I think they need to listen with regards to maybe a classic or a nostalgic universe. And I think it's easy. I think I say it's easy. I'm not the one who creates rides, so I can say it's easy all day long, but I think it's one of the easiest things they could possibly do. So with that, I'll go through a couple of things that I don't think are going to change with regards to like Despicable Me, with regards to Minions Villain Con, my least favorite ride name to say, because I always say Minions Villain Con every single time. They're not going anywhere. Like, huge franchises, like obviously They come hand in hand. They're popular with children. They're popular with adults as well. They're not going anywhere. That is what it is. Race Through New York with Jimmy Fallon. I'm going to be real, yeah? I'm not a huge fan. I'm not a huge fan, but I'm not a huge fan because I've never really watched The Tonight Show. I don't really get it, but I do appreciate, and I've spoken to people who've said that they have watched The Tonight Show. It means a lot more to them. And I'm all for that. I'm all for it. Just because I haven't watched it doesn't mean doesn't mean the ride's not good. I still find it entertaining. It just doesn't do a huge amount for me personally, but I can understand why people like it. I think it's fairly unique. I think it's a good bit of fun. Does that mean I'm going to ride it every trip? No, it doesn't. But at the same time, I understand why people do. I don't think that's going anywhere. The Mummy, that ain't going anywhere. Absolute classic. Had a retrack, 2 years ago? Ain't going anywhere. We've got Transformers, massive franchise. The ride, in my opinion, is still a good ride. I think it's a popular ride. It ain't going anywhere. I think that's absolutely fine. You've got Diagon Alley, like no brainer. It's the reason why I think a lot of people go to Universal Studios. That is untouched as well. And then I would say the Bourne Stuntacular isn't going anywhere. Obviously, it's fairly new as well. And I think the reception to that is actually very positive. And then I suppose the only other thing is the what was Kids Zone. So you've got all like the new Shrek and DreamWorks Land with ET as well. All of that, in my opinion, isn't going to change, and none of that is going to get updated or removed anytime in the next probably 10 years, I would say. But what I will say is there's a couple of spaces and there's a couple of attractions dotted around that maybe could change. And we've already touched on Rip Ride Rockit. We've touched on Fast and Furious. There's three other spaces. There's three other spaces in this park that potentially could do with updating. Let's go to the biggest one, Springfield. I like Springfield, okay? I'm not going to knock it. I'm not going to knock it in the sense of I'm not going to say it's rubbish because I know some people think it looks a bit tired, looks a bit worn. I don't mind it. I like the area. I like The Simpsons. I don't actively watch The Simpsons, but obviously I watched it growing up. I don't dislike the ride too much. And I know it makes a lot of people feel a bit motion sick, and I absolutely get that because I have come off it feeling a bit flushed at times. But I don't get it too bad. So I don't feel quite as strongly on it as I know some people do. But as some of you might know and some of you might not, Disney purchased the rights to Fox. They bought 20th Century Fox or 21st Century Fox or whatever Fox was at the point it got sold. They bought it, was it 5 years ago now? And with that, it basically, the deal was that Universal can keep Simpsons in their park until I think it was 2000. I want to say it's 2028. So until 2028, Simpsons can stay in Universal Studios, despite the fact that Disney own it. It is a Disney property, but they can keep it. It's a different situation with regards to Marvel. I explained it in the Marvel comes to Walt Disney World episode, which was quite an early on episode I did actually, like episode 5 or something like that. I basically explained as to why Marvel Superhero Island is here to stay and will not be going anywhere anytime soon. Springfield is different. Springfield is gonna go. Like categorically, there is no way on this world that Springfield stays forever. It physically will not and cannot stay. So by 2028, Universal are going to have closed it. So it's going to become a priority. And I don't think it'll be their next priority. I personally think Rip Ride Rockit will be their next priority, in my opinion. I think sorting out the Fast and Furious problem is right up there. So I think in the order of which I'm talking about it, I think Rip Ride Rockit goes. I think that's getting its whatever built there, potentially a coaster for Fast and Furious. I think Fast and Furious gets shut after that's done, and I think then that gets phased to whatever the new attraction is there. Hopefully, I'm kind of fan casting all of this, and hopefully it ends up being our nostalgic universe ride. Then I think they're going over to Springfield. I think they're then going to shut Springfield, and there's been a lot of rumors. There's been a lot of rumors that Pokemon will be the IP, the franchise, the brand to go into this area. I get it. I do get it. I think I mean, Pokemon is over 20 years old. Pokemon is a strong franchise, and it certainly had a resurgence, I think, over the last 5 years. I think obviously it's been massive over the years, but it certainly dipped at one point, but I think it's had a bit of a comeback. And I think it works. I actually think it will lend itself quite well, because I think everybody kind of probably knows Pokemon, or they know Pokemon to an extent. And I don't think you need to know the separate Pokemon. You might inevitably, we all know the original 151. That's kind of the classic. But, or was it 151? I'm sure it was 151. Someone's going to come at me and tell me that it was actually originally 150 and then Mew got added or something like that. Or maybe it was 149 and then it was Mewtwo. I don't know. I'm getting into it. I don't know. I'm sure it was 151. It was maybe 149 without Mew and Mewtwo. Don't quote me. But if someone knows the answer, then please do tell me as well. Getting back on track anyway, I think that it lends itself. I think it would actually work quite well. And I think, again, we get into the, do they retheme? So they're going to retheme the area. The area is going to get rethemed. I can't see it getting hugely changed in terms of like the construction of the area. Will they flatten the ride? I don't think they'll flatten it. I think they'll heavily update it. I think they'll heavily update the screens, because you cannot, I mean, categorically, you cannot possibly look to go and update a ride that people get motion sickness on and just go and change what's happening on the screen. No, you need to literally sort out the problem that's making everyone ill. Like, so I think they're clever enough to do that. So I think it will be the same style. I think that will be fairly inevitable. Maybe it will be a different type of, maybe it won't be in the cars. I don't know. But whatever way they do it, I think that you'll find that it'll be updated. I think it'll be heavily updated. And I think the technology will progress significantly from what it's got at the moment. But I think that Pokemon will end up going in there. I would be actually quite surprised at this point if it didn't. I'm all for it. I like a bit of Pokemon. Don't get me wrong. Like, I can't say I watch it or anything like that nowadays, but I've played the games. I've played the games growing up an awful lot. I used to watch it a lot growing up. I used to collect Pokemon cards. I can see the excitement of it, and I can see the excitement of making it a fairly interactive area as well. So that is what is heavily rumored, and that is what I totally believe will happen with regards to Springfield. 2028, I think it will close, and I think by maybe 2030, we'll expect to see something like Pokemon in that area. We got two more areas left, two more areas that I think are inevitably going to get updated or replaced, flattened, or whatever happens at some point in the next 8 years, I reckon. Men in Black. I'm sorry, guys, but I think Men in Black's going. I think at some point, I think it's run its time. And I love it. I do love it. Don't get me wrong. I'm not bashing it by any means. And I love nostalgia. I do. But at some point, I think you've got to call time. And I love Men in Black. I absolutely do. And I think, in fairness, let's wind back like maybe 5 or 6 years when the new Men in Black film came out. Was it Men in Black 4? 3? 4? I think, I don't know. When Men in Black International, Men in Black, I don't know what it was called. I've seen it. It wasn't great. The one with Chris Hemsworth and Tessa Thompson, Valkyrie, the lady who plays Valkyrie in 4. I feel bad. I don't know her name. I'm googling it. I'm googling it. It was Tessa Thompson. I was right. Yeah, that film wasn't great. I think if that film had done well, I think if it had been a smash at the box office, no brainer. I think they'd have rethemed. I think they'd have done it. And I think it probably would have been in the plans. I don't think there's any doubt in my mind, but at the same time, it didn't. So with that, they went, well, we're not going to spend the money on it. I think at some point it's going to change. Do I think that it needs to still be a shooter ride there? Absolutely, categorically, yes, I do. I would say, and I don't know if there's a new Men in Black film coming out again. I think they might have probably tried it and unfortunately not succeeded. So I can't see them doing another one. But are there other franchises that work for them to do a shooter? I mean, inevitably, absolutely inevitably. So at some point, I would expect this ride to get an update. I would, and it's a shame. And the difficulty is that they're not going to do it until they've got something right to take over. So Men in Black is still going to get people to go on it as it is at the moment. I think people are still going to enjoy it. But at some point, the nostalgia is potentially going to wear off. I don't know. Tell me if I'm wrong. Tell me if I'm just being a little bit judgy on Men in Black here. Like, and I'm telling you, I do love this ride. All right, so like, I'm not bashing it. I'm really not. I'm just saying that I think at some point, I really do think that it's probably going to need updating. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. I don't know what to do with it. That is the question. I really don't know. We'll see. We'll see. But the next thing and the next space that we've got in this park is where Fear Factor used to be. So here we go. What do we do with the Fear Factor stage? It's a massive area. There was so many rumors for so long that this was going to be Ministry of Magic. So years and years. And like, I think at a point it was like, it was nailed on. And then they got the approval for Epic. And then they opted to go, you know what, let's put some Harry Potter in Epic because we know that it'll get people through the door. Yeah, fair enough. It's clever. But do I think that the Fear Factor stage is going to remain vacant forevermore? No, I do not. I think that it is such a big area that they are going to do something with it and they're going to try and do something big. There are little to no rumors as to what they're going to do with this area. So we're going to get a bit of Russ fan casting here. So we're going to get what I think, what I want. Well, what I think is that Universal Studios lacks shows. So I think there's a couple of things they need to do with it. Ultimately, you've got to look at the franchises they've got and what they would potentially put there. They're going to try and pull from one of their own franchises. They're not going to just want to keep pulling from other franchises, such as like Warner Brothers franchises, such as Harry Potter. They're not going to want to keep pulling from Nintendo's franchises, for example, if they're going to do Pokemon as well as like Super Mario. They're going to want to use one of their own. They do not have that many. Or they do not have that many they haven't used. They have done their franchises to death over the years. If you have a little Google and you type in Universal franchises, you have probably seen some form of presence from nearly all of the franchises they've had, apart from one. And the reason why I say that is because this one hasn't come out yet. I think, and I am prepared to hang my hat on this, so in 3 years' time, when this inevitably gets announced, you can come back to me and be like, Russ, how did you know? Well, just I knew. I reckon they'll go Wicked. I think Wicked will be the one. They've obviously gone. I said this a while ago as well, and I'm so annoyed because I said this a while ago, and then they opened the kind of like tribute store thing for Wicked. This was my idea. Yeah, I think they'll go Wicked. I think the first part of the part one of two is coming out in November. I'm pretty sure the next one is then going to come out next November. So you've got two mega films coming out in the next 2 years. I would be amazed, and I don't know, but I watch a lot of film. I go to the cinema an awful lot. I would be amazed if Wicked is not the biggest franchise of the year. That stage show has been on for over a decade and has been like non-stop packed. So they know it's going to be a big hit. They know enough people have seen the show, the stage show adaptation. Enough people have read the books. There is enough people behind this franchise for it to be successful. The cast is really good. The visuals look really good from the trailers. Unless they release the film and it's just trash, which, and I was about to say, just won't happen. It has happened in the past because we literally just talked about Men in Black. But my point is that I think it'll be good. I think that it'll be good, and I think it'll be good enough and strong enough that they'll pull the trigger on Wicked. And I think Wicked lends itself to this part really well. And with that, could they bring some sort of show to Universal Studios? I think they absolutely can. I think you could pull on any of the songs from the stage show and put them into this area as part of a show. Absolutely. I think of like Emerald City, I think of Popular, I think of obviously, I think of Defying Gravity as well. You could use any of these songs and put them in this park, have them as part of a fun attraction, kind of like stage show, and people will go, they'll flock to it. I also think that as a ride, it lends itself. I think that they can do a screen-based ride, which is Universal's favorite thing to do, and I definitely think that they can do a screen-based ride with this franchise. I think it would be an absolute shout. I'm all for it. I think it'd be brilliant. I think this kind of fantasy land lends itself. I really, really do. And that's just me kind of like fan casting it. I think that if all of that happened, in my opinion, I think that this would be a really well-rounded park. I think that kind of from going from the start, you'd still have Despicable Me, you'd have Minions, you would then potentially have a Fast and Furious roller coaster, which hopefully will be really good fun. You'd have Jimmy Fallon, you'd have Transformers, you've had The Mummy, you'd still have the Wizarding World of Harry Potter, then you would have Wicked, you would then have potentially an updated version of Men in Black, you would have a whole Pokemon section, you would have the DreamWorks land with E.T., and then you would also have Bourne Stuntacular as well. I think as a park, what a well-rounded park. And I think there's strong franchises in there that would draw people to this park. I think that those 3 or 4 changes, and I know these are big, and I know that we're talking about a lot of money to be able to do this, but I think that these kind of changes to this park, just to update it, and as much as anything to update things that have been there a long time, and to fill gaps in the park that are fairly vacant. So we're talking of things such as the Fear Factor stage, or I mean, it might as well be vacant, but Fast and Furious, like to be able to put something worthwhile in this space, I think is really, really needed. And I say that for Simpsons as well, because I know that a lot of you don't go on Simpsons because it makes you feel ill. So at this point, what is the point of having it? It's a franchise that they don't even own, and it's such a big space and a big land, and people aren't using it. So if the majority of your customers are not going on this ride, I think you need to look at it pretty quickly and go, you know what, let's do something. Let's change it up. So there we go. Hopefully some of my ideas come to fruition. We will see. We will see in the future. I certainly think that once Epic Universe is open, and I think we're going to get an announcement for Epic Universe probably within the next month at this point. Surely they're going to say when this park is going to open. And then I can drop my episode on and everything you need to know about Epic Universe. But currently, I don't know everything there is to know about Epic Universe, so I can't do the episode. I've been itching to do it for months, and I've nearly done it a couple of times. I'm like, wait until I have all the information, then I can give all of the information in one go. But yeah, it's exciting times. It really, really is. And again, like I said in the Future of Walt Disney World one, it's not a bash on the park. It's really not. I love Universal. I absolutely love it. But I really, really do think that there are a few things that can be updated. I think that there's some easy stuff that they can do to just bring this park up to the modern day and up to standards of what they've set themselves with some of the attractions that they've already got. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this one. And I talked about quite a lot of this stuff with Parks and Pals. And on Parks and Pals, as I'm sure a lot of you have seen, we are doing the Orlando Awards, and I am so excited. I'm so excited for the Orlando Awards. This is going to be good fun. Like, we are doing 10 categories. So 10 categories that you are going to be able to put your votes in, your suggestions of what you think are, for example, the best roller coaster, or the best ride that isn't a roller coaster, or best show, or best restaurant, best hotel. You're going to get an option on voting on all of these things, and we're going to basically come up with a top 4 for all of these categories. When we get to the top 4, we're then going to be putting them out as a vote. So you will all get the opportunity to vote on what you think out of the 4 most popular answers we get. You're going to be able to vote what you think is the best. And we will do a big award ceremony at the end of the year. This is going to be fun. So please, please, please do check out my story, check out Parks and Power's story. Whenever we release it, we're going to release all of the votes at the same time. You can vote on both people's stories, vote on every account you've got. Literally, if you want to see something put into that top 4, get every vote you can possibly get in there. All right. I'm telling you, because what I don't want is us to come to best roller coaster and you all go, oh yeah, but Velocicoaster and Hagrid's are going to win it, and then no one votes for Velocicoaster and Hagrid's, and we end up like the Troller Coaster, or we end up with Slinky Dog Dash winning best coaster. Like, come on, guys. So basically what I'm saying is that everyone's got to vote. You've got to vote. You've got to put your word in. Like, if you believe that something is the favorite in your opinion, get it in. So anyway, that's going to be a lot of fun. Keep your eyes peeled. I'll keep trying to remind everyone as well, and hopefully it'll be fun. That's the main thing. Ultimately, we wanted to get everybody in the community involved in these awards because it's what we all love, and we all love talking about it. So let's try and shout about it. Let's try and find out what everybody thinks is their favorite of everything in Orlando. Once again, thank you all so much for listening to this episode. I hope you've all enjoyed it, and do let me know. Let me know what you think of my wild ideas for the future of Universal Studios, but let me know what you would do as well. What would you do with, for example, Rip Ride Rockit? What would you do with the Springfield area? Are you a massive Fast and Furious fan? Do you want Fast and Furious to stay where it is? I don't know. Is my idea of Wicked like just a bit too wild? I don't know. And let's not get into my opinion on the on Men in Black. Like, honestly, I love talking to you all about all of the things to do with the podcast and everything to do with Orlando. So honestly, always send me a message because I love it. And I love it when you all share that you're listening to the podcast. Thank you once again. And I will speak to you all in the next one.